Welcome back to the next episode, 30 Days of Persuasion Plays with me, Paul Macetta. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the fact that the human mind loves contrast. The human mind loves contrast. So, one of the ways that we as a species make sense of the world is through comparison, through comparing certain experiences, things, whatever you want to call it, with other things and then making judgments about them. So, imagine for a second, you got 3 buckets of water. You got a bucket with cold water, a bucket with hot water, and a bucket with warm water. If you put your left leg in the bucket with cold water and your right leg in the bucket with hot water, and then took both legs and put them in the bucket with the warm water, what would happen is the leg that was in the cold water would now feel warm, and the leg that was in the hot water would now feel cooler. Yet, you're standing in the same bucket of water at the same temperature. So why does each leg feel different? Simply because the brain is comparing hot to cold, right? So when it experiences hot and you put it in warm, it makes the comparison and finds cold or cool. When you do the opposite, it finds warm. So the human mind loves comparison. It loves to compare things. It's how we make sense of the world. So how do you utilize this to your advantage when it comes to persuading others? You have to utilize contrast. One of the easiest ways to do that is to contrast the price of your offer, meaning you can either contrast the price with your competitor's price, or if you don't believe on selling based on price or price versus your competitors, you could simply contrast the price of the current price with the normal price. So if you've ever walked into a store and looked at the price of something as it is versus what it looks like when the price is scratched out with a new price underneath it, the brain instantly believes and thinks that the new price is better. So if you walked into a store and saw a pair of sneakers and you looked at them and the price tag said $50 on them, you would look at that and you would say, okay, that's either in my budget or it's not. But if you went to that same exact store and the price tag said $129 slashed out, sale price $50, that same exact number is going to look a lot more appealing to you simply because of the contrast factor. You know, there's a dirty trick that real estate agents used for years when they wanted to sell somebody a house. They would take them to a rat hole of a house that was falling apart and show it to the prospect, so that afterwards, when they took them to the house that they really wanted to sell them, the person would be much more inclined to buy it because they're mentally comparing what they just saw with what they're seeing now. So when you contrast your offer with something else, you instantly change the perception of it, right? The perception of something always changes the moment that we compare it to something else. Next is the experience of your offer. So if you provide some sort of a service to somebody, you can contrast the experience that they're going to have when they have your product or service versus not having your product or service. So maybe if you're trying to sell them a Mercedes, you show them the difference between how they're going to feel when they drive down the street on a nice spring day, 65 degrees, they got the top down, they're listening to their favorite music, they're stopped at the red light, the young girls that are walking by are looking at them, waving to them, they feel like $1 million, versus how they're going to feel driving down the block in their Kia on an average day, feeling like an average person, right? Two completely different experiences. Contrast the experience of the offer. And then next, you can contrast yourself. If you are the product or service, or if dealing with you or the interaction with you is a big part of the reason why they would say yes, and oftentimes that's the case. Oftentimes people will only buy from a specific person because of the relationship that they have with that person. Show them how dealing with you is different, better than dealing with a competitor. So always utilize contrast when you deal with somebody, because the perception of something changes the minute you compare it to something else. The trick is this. Obviously, and this goes without saying, I mean, this is common sense. Obviously, you want to contrast your offer to something else that obviously makes your offer look a lot better. But utilize contrast because it's definitely going to help you.